They were just like you, going about their normal day, unaware that they were moments away from vanishing forever. No goodbye, no screams, no clues, just silence and fear. In today's video, we dive deep into 3 terrifying true stories of people who disappeared without a trace. Not in war zones or jungles, but in places you'd never expect. Quiet villages, lonely highways, and even inside the walls of a college dorm room. What makes these cases even more disturbing is that despite full-scale investigations, not a single logical explanation was ever found. Eyewitnesses spoke of impossible sightings, eerie voices, and shadowy figures lurking just out of reach. If you think you're safe, think again. These are the kinds of stories that cling to your thoughts when you're alone, in the dark, wondering if someone or something is watching you too. Stay with us until the very end, because the final story might just haunt you forever. Tonight, you'll hear 3 separate yet equally chilling tales. Each story begins with ordinary lives, students, workers, everyday people, just like the ones we see around us. But in a blink, the veil of normalcy shatters, revealing something sinister beneath. First, we'll travel to a remote mountain town where a young hiker went missing after reporting strange lights in the sky. The search lasted weeks, but what they found in the woods left even the seasoned investigators in shock. Then, we'll follow the story of a college student who vanished during a quiet night in her dorm. Her roommate reported hearing scratching on the walls and soft whispering in a room that was locked from the inside. Finally, we uncover the case of a delivery driver who took his usual route through a long stretch of forest, but his GPS signal blinked out near mile marker 13, and what was later discovered on his dash cam is still unexplained to this day. These aren't urban legends, these are documented cases, so dim the lights, sit back and prepare yourself, because these true stories of vanishing are unlike anything you've ever heard. Story 1. The Vanishing in Raven's Hollow. Nestled deep within the rugged beauty of the Appalachian Mountains lies a town that whispers its name only to those who listen closely, Raven's Hollow. With a population of merely 312, it's a place where time seems to pause and the air is thick with the scent of pine and earth. The town is cloaked in dense forests that echo with the songs of unseen birds and enveloped in misty mornings that shroud it in mystery. It is the kind of place that seems untouched by the outside world, known more for its verdant landscapes and the myths that swirl around its wooded trails than for any modern convenience. In October of 2016, this serene town became the epicenter of a mystery that would grip the imagination of all who heard it. The air was crisp, carrying a hint of wood smoke and the promise of winter. Luke Harrison, a 24-year-old with a thirst for adventure and a heart that beat in sync with the wild, arrived in Raven's Hollow. From an early age, Luke had been enamored with the great outdoors, his childhood spent camping under star-strewn skies and learning the secrets of the forest from his grandfather. He was drawn to places that promised solitude and the chance to connect with nature, a passion that had led him to the town and its ominous trail. Luke had meticulously documented his plan to explore the Widow's Path, a trail notorious in local lore for the misfortunes that befell those who dared tread its course. The story went that a widow had once wandered the path in search of her lost love, her spirit forever haunting those woods. Seasoned hunters shunned it, their tales woven with warnings and shadows, but Luke, steadfast in his skepticism of such stories, dismissed the legends with a laugh. He wasn't superstitious. He was a seeker of the untamed, driven by an insatiable desire to experience the world's untouched corners. After checking into the quaint, time-worn inn, the only one in town, Luke prepared for his journey. The innkeeper, a wizened man with eyes that seemed to see beyond the present, observed Luke with a mixture of curiosity and foreboding. "Be careful out there," he said softly, his words hanging in the air like a prophecy. Luke nodded, slinging his backpack over his shoulder, the weight of anticipation and excitement filling his chest. As he walked toward the trailhead, the crisp leaves crunching underfoot, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. What if the stories were true? An uneasy feeling settled in the pit of his stomach, but he shook it off, attributing it to the chill in the air. He could feel the thrill of the unknown beckoning him forward, each step echoing with the possibility of discovery or danger. The forest seemed to close around him, the silence broken only by the whisper of the wind through the trees. It was the last time anyone would see him. The innkeeper's face haunted him as he disappeared into the woods, his parting words a ghostly echo that lingered in the silence, blending with the legends of Raven's Hollow. That evening, as the sun dipped below the tree line, several residents reported seeing strange, pulsating lights above the forest. Blue, then red, then an intense white glow that shimmered just beyond the ridge. Some thought it was a meteor, others a forest fire, but no smoke followed. The next morning, Luke's car was still parked by the trailhead, but there was no sign of Luke. Search and rescue teams scoured the area for nearly 2 weeks. Dogs picked up his scent, only to lose it abruptly in the middle of the path, as if he had simply evaporated. Even more disturbing, searchers found his camera bag on the side of the trail, lens cap removed, camera missing, but tucked inside the bag was his journal. The final entry read, "There's something out here, watching, it's not human." The search was called off with no results. To this day, no remains were found, no camera, just the whisper of Luke's words echoing through the trees. Story 2. The Night Visitor at Milburn Hall. Milburn University is a small, prestigious college nestled amidst the picturesque landscapes of New England. The campus, draped in a tapestry of ivy, proudly upholds a tradition of excellence with a history reaching back to the 1800s. Its serene pathways and the crisp autumn air evoke a sense of timelessness. Among the stately buildings stands Milburn Hall, one of the oldest on campus, its stone facade a testament to the ages. Inside, the creaky wooden floors whisper stories of long past, echoing with the solemn footsteps of students who once pondered philosophy and theology. Yet beneath its antique charm and the scent of polished wood, Milburn Hall harbors secrets, particularly in the infamous Room 313. Students exchange hushed tales of books inexplicably flying from shelves, disembodied, whispers weaving through the silence of night and shadows that defy the laws of logic. Most dismiss these as mere urban legends. That is, until the fall semester of 2018, when sophomore Amber Lewis found herself assigned to that very room. Amber had heard the rumors, of course. Stories about Room 313 circulated like ghost stories around a campfire, growing more elaborate with each retelling. But she was not one to be swayed by tales of the supernatural. On her first day, she moved in with a determination to focus on her studies, dismissing the eerie legends as nothing more than campus folklore. The room itself was unassuming, with aged furniture and walls that carried the weight of history. Amber unpacked her belongings, arranging her books and organizing her desk mentally, preparing for the semester ahead. Yet as she settled in, she couldn't shake the feeling that the room was watching her, its walls whispering secrets only it knew. Her first few nights were uneventful, the usual sounds of a bustling dormitory, filling the air, but slowly, subtle things began to happen. Books would be found on the floor, though she was certain she had left them neatly stacked. Her desk lamp flickered, casting strange shadows that seemed to dance across the walls. Each time she dismissed these occurrences as quirks of an old building, nothing more. It wasn't until the third night that the atmosphere shifted. Amber awoke to the sensation of being watched, a cold draft brushing against her skin, despite the windows being tightly shut. As she lay in bed, the room seemed to close in around her, the darkness pulsating with a life of its own. And then she heard it, a soft, melodic humming drifting through the air like a lullaby from another world. Fear gripped her, but her rational mind fought back, searching for a logical explanation. Perhaps it was the wind or the pipes settling, she told herself. But deep down, she knew this was different. The humming grew louder, more insistent, wrapping around her like a shroud. It was then that she saw it, a shadow at the foot of her bed, darker than the night itself, its form shifting and writhing as if struggling to maintain its shape. Heart and pounding, Amber reached for her phone, the glow of the screen offering a small comfort against the encroaching darkness. The shadow remained, unmoving, a silent specter that defied explanation. Gathering her courage, she bolted from the room, seeking refuge in the brightly lit corridors of the dormitory. Despite her disbelief in ghosts, Amber couldn't ignore what she had experienced. She shared her story with a few trusted friends, and together they approached the campus administration. But the response was the same as it had always been: dismissal, explanations rooted in science and logic. Yet the stories persisted, and Amber refused to return to room 313. As the semester progressed, whispers of other students experiencing similar phenomena surfaced, each account adding to the legacy of Milburn Hall's haunted room. Eventually, the administration sealed the room, citing renovations, but those who knew the truth understood it was something more. Amber's encounter was a story she would carry with her long after she left Milburn University, a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be understood. And though Milburn Hall stands as a beacon of academic excellence, its shadowy corners hold secrets that only reveal themselves in the silence of the night. Amber Lewis prided herself on her rational mind. A psychology major, she had always approached life with a heady mix of logic and skepticism. Raised in a bustling city where the only ghosts were those of forgotten dreams, Amber had never entertained notions of the supernatural. Her childhood was filled with science fairs and debates, not ghost stories. So when she first stepped into room 313, she was unfazed by the peeling wallpaper and the faint, musty scent of age that permeated the air. The power flickering on her first night was met with a roll of her eyes, attributed to the building's ancient wiring, which she surmised was as old as the stories themselves. The soft hum of the radiator and the comforting rustle of leaves against her window were the lullabies she expected. But on the second night, a different tune played out. Amber jolted awake to her laptop flickering to life on its own. The screen, a storm of static, while a low, unsettling hum filled the room. It was as though the room itself was breathing, each pulse growing louder, wrapping around her like a shroud. She convinced herself it was a virus, a mundane explanation for an eerie occurrence, and shut it off. Yet, the hum persisted, rising to a crescendo before cutting out abruptly at 3:17 a.m. The silence that followed was deafening, pressing against her eardrums, casting a shadow of dread over her resolve. The third night was different. She lay in bed, the familiar weight of sleep eluding her, when she heard it, a heavy, labored breathing. It wasn't hers. It didn't come from outside. It was right above her. Panic gripped her, a cold hand squeezing her heart as she fumbled for her phone, its light a beacon in the oppressive darkness. What she saw froze her blood. A tall, faceless figure loomed on the ceiling, its form a void of pure darkness, limbs contorted like a grotesque spider, its head tilted unnaturally as if observing her with an unseen gaze. Amber's mind raced, A cacophony of disbelief and terror, battling the instinct to flee with the paralysis of fear. Could this be real, or an elaborate trick of the mind? She questioned her own senses, every fiber of her being screaming for rationality, yet faced with the inexplicable. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing her growing dread as she lay frozen beneath the watchful, faceless specter above. Terrified, she fled to the RA's room, barefoot and in tears. They checked her room together. Nothing there. No signs of forced entry, no malfunctioning electronics. But Amber refused to sleep there again. She moved out that weekend. 2 weeks later, another student was assigned to room 313. Same events, same figure. This time, the student attempted to record it. And though the footage was later deleted under strange circumstances, a few frames were leaked on a campus subreddit. A warped, inhuman silhouette crawling along the ceiling, almost blending with the shadows. Administration closed room 313 permanently, citing structural concerns. But students still say, if you pass by the room after midnight, you can hear the humming, waiting. Story 3. Voices from the Boiler Room. Nestled deep within the urban sprawl of Chicago sits Harlow Technical Institute, a no-frills community college known for its night classes and trade programs. The main campus operates nearly 24/7 with janitors, security staff and maintenance teams working odd hours to keep things running. Among them was Raymond Torres, a quiet blue-collar man in his 50s who'd spent nearly 2 decades as the school's nighttime boiler technician. The job was lonely but routine. Check the pressure gauges, monitor fuel levels, inspect the furnaces. Harlow's boiler room was an old, dimly lit maze beneath the campus, a labyrinth of rusted pipes, leaking valves, and echoing steel. Raymond had grown used to the eerie ambiance, but in early November 2015, something changed. Something started speaking to him. At first, Raymond dismissed the odd occurrences as symptoms of fatigue or his own imagination playing tricks on him during the late hours. But as the weeks wore on, the whispers grew more persistent, more insistent, weaving through the clanking of old machinery and the steady hum of the boilers. The words seemed to seep from the very walls, calling his name with an urgency that sent shivers down his spine. Despite his initial reluctance, Raymond became fixated on the source of the whispers. He found himself drawn to the south end of the boiler room, a section shrouded in shadows and marked with a faded "Danger, do not enter" sign. It was a place long forgotten by most, rumored to be structurally unsound and off-limits since before Raymond's tenure began. Yet the voices seemed to emanate from there, beckoning him with a chilling familiarity. During his shifts, Raymond would catch glimpses of movement from the corner of his eye, fleeting shadows that darted just out of view. And the whispers, always the whispers, grew louder, more coherent. They spoke of things hidden, secrets buried beneath layers of dust and grime. One night, a particularly urgent whisper uttered a single word that echoed in his mind: "Below." Driven by a mix of fear, curiosity, and an inexplicable compulsion, Raymond decided to investigate further. He armed himself with a flashlight and a tape recorder, determined to capture evidence of whatever was haunting him. The next night, he ventured into the forbidden section, the air growing colder with each step as the whispers crescendoed around him. What Raymond found was beyond anything he had imagined. A hidden sub-basement, its entrance barely visible beneath, decades of dust. The moment he stepped inside, the temperature plummeted and the whispers transformed into an overwhelming cacophony. Heart pounding, he pressed onward, driven by a need to uncover the truth. But as his flashlight flickered and died, leaving him in utter darkness, terror took hold. In that moment of panic, something brushed against him, cold and intangible, and Raymond fled, leaving the tape recorder behind. The next day, when he returned to retrieve it, the entrance was inexplicably sealed. No one claimed responsibility, and the whispers ceased, leaving only silence in their wake. Though he never returned to the boiler room, the experience left an indelible mark on Raymond. He knew what he had heard was real, that something lay beneath Harlow Technical Institute, hidden in the shadows, waiting. And as he left his post for the last time, he couldn't shake the feeling that the whispers would never truly leave him, forever echoing in the recesses of his mind. It began subtly. Whispers carried through the steam vents, faint voices he chalked up to late-night faculty conversations, or maybe echoes bouncing through the underground tunnels. But soon they became distinct. Raymond, they would whisper, over and over. Always his name, always from the darkness near the south end of the boiler room, the part no one went into anymore due to unsafe foundations. Raymond tried to ignore it, but one night, while tightening a valve, a sudden rush of freezing air enveloped the room, unnatural for the boiler room's typical swelter. The lights dimmed, and a single word hissed out of the shadows. Below, he ran. For the first time in 20 years, Raymond abandoned his post mid-shift. But he returned the next night, driven by fear and curiosity. He brought a flashlight and a small tape recorder. When he reached the forbidden section, he found the locked steel access door to the sub-basement cracked open, though no one had the key. Inside, the air was ice cold, and his breath became visible. He descended 5 rusted steps, then stopped. The space beyond was wrong. The floor was damp and uneven, covered in something that looked like old ash and bone fragments. The whispering grew louder, now a chorus. The tape recorder clicked to life, capturing low moans and guttural voices in a language he couldn't recognize. And then the flashlight died. Raymond panicked. He turned and ran, tripping on the steps and bruising his ribs. The recorder was left behind. The next morning he tried to retrieve it, but the door to the sub-basement was sealed shut, welded, closed. When questioned, security claimed no one had been down there in years. Raymond quit that week and never set foot on campus again. But a janitor who took over his shift found something odd days later behind the furnace. A burnt cassette. Recorder still intact, but melted into the floor. Some stories live in the headlines, others fade into whispers. But these true horrifying encounters from the quiet corners of campuses, from the unseen shadows of boiler rooms and lecture halls, reveal that something darker exists beneath our so-called normal lives. What ties these tales together is not just the paranormal. It's the eerie truth that no matter how familiar a place may seem, once the sun sets and silence settles, reality can fracture. Whether it's the sudden vanishing of students without a trace, the inexplicable presence that haunts an abandoned dormitory, or the whispers rising from a sealed sub-basement. These aren't just ghost stories. These are real accounts, documented, investigated, and experienced by real people who were never the same again. So before you turn off the lights tonight, ask yourself, what would you do if the darkness spoke? Your name? If a door opened that wasn't there before? If you heard footsteps when no one was near? These stories serve as a chilling reminder that what haunts us isn't just what's in the past, but what still lingers, right behind the walls. And chances are, if you're watching this video alone, you might want to double-check that your door is really locked. If these stories gripped you, left your skin crawling or your heart racing, don't leave without taking action. Hit the like button to support this spine-chilling series. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, because we've only just scratched the surface of the dark, and we want you with us on every terrifying step. Comment below. Has anything unexplainable ever happened to you on a night shift or in a place that should have been empty? We're watching the comments, and your story might be featured in our next video. Until then, stay safe, stay alert, And never ignore the sounds that echo when you're alone.